see. Something's going to happen. Something wonderful.
My God, it's full of stars.
Yo, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to the NY Patriot Show. Thank you very much for tuning in again. If this is your first time coming across the show, hit that like and subscribe button, share it or whatever. If you came across this because you like the topic, I'm sure you will like the other stuff that I cover. Today I have with me also my partner in crime and co-host for the NY Patriot Show. I got my good friend and amazing Canadian, Italian Canadian, Teresa. What's going on, Teresa? Say hi to everybody.
What is up? Thank you for having me.
Of course. Would you like to let everybody know about that amazing podcast I co-host with you?
Yeah, we have another awesome show together called The Spiritual Gangsters, which is very different than this show. So I love this show, obviously. This is where we get real weird and it's fun. But The Spiritual Gangsters is a little more personal. We usually interview really interesting people, get to know them, and they share like wild experiences they've had. Sometimes we cover other topics, but yeah, it's very different than this show. So please check it out, but related, you know.
Yeah. No, honestly, I even have to say when we do your show, it's like, I guess it's like a breath of fresh air for me. It's kind of like a break from what I'm doing, but it's still great content, and you just get to hear people's personal stories. I love it. I really do. And we also got the man, the myth, the legend. We got General fucking Lee up in the house. Lee, you want to say what's up to everybody?
Now then, everybody. Thank you very much, mate.
Of course. Yo, if I was having Robby on, you got to come on, my man. You know?
Yeah, thanks, mate. I really appreciate it. And this subject is equally as fascinating as the next.
For sure. You want to let everybody know where they can find your stuff real quick?
Yeah. Subconscious Realms. Available on Anchor, Spotify, and Apple. Instagram is at subcon_realms33. Twitter is at subconrealms33, and email subconsciousrealms@gmail.com.
Very nice. Thank you very much, General. And today, as you can see in the title, we got Robby Marx on again. He's been on the show a few times. If you have not checked out or you have not heard of this man before, I highly suggest to go back to my show and check out a 4-part series I did with him on Nimrod and the Skinwalker. I still even have another episode. I feel so bad, Robby. I'm going to admit it to you here live on YouTube. I recorded that Bohemia and Prussia episode. I made it and then never uploaded it. So, unfortunately, when I came across it, I was like, fuck, unless I'm going to rearrange 12 or 13 shows, I just had to put you at the end. But I have another banger of his coming out, and I think in about another month, and this will probably follow after that about another month for the people who are not watching it live. But I highly suggest, you're going to love this show. Go back to the other ones and check them out. I mean, that guy, he brought receipts. It fucking blew my mind. It was, I'm very proud to have had that series, and covering that topic.
Yeah, it was fun. And as far as time, man, I mean, honestly, the gears work the way the gears work, and it'll probably come out exactly when it needs to come out.
That could be it too, maybe. You never know. So, that was the Matrix working in its own way, Right. So, Robby, I guess, just let everybody know maybe kind of like where you're coming from with this topic. It is the Emerald Tablets. I don't know if this is going to be 1 or 2 episodes. If it is, that's quite all right with me. I have no problem letting Robby do his thing. So I'm just letting the listeners know this may be a part 2. If not, we'll get it all in today.
Yeah, let's see how it goes.
Yeah, just let everybody know if you don't mind, because I know you kind of wanted to do your spiel about where you're coming from. And this and that.
Over the many years that I've been digging into these topics, early on in my youth, I came across the book, The Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Atlantean, or Thoth, depending on who says it. But and I was just blown away by some of the information in that book, and I've actually had 2 or 3 copies over the years, but it's taken many years to kind of hammer out and determine what the Emerald Tablet is versus the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. So we're going to basically start in prehistory and kind of cover a couple characters that are essential in regard to the topic of the Emerald tablets, and that way you'll kind of have a base understanding of how this evolved and where it came from, and then we're going to basically walk through the history from the oldest to the newest. So yeah,
sounds like a fun ride to me, my man.
Oh yes, yeah.
I got my pen ready for notes. I'm ready for this lecture.
Yeah.
So now when you look back, some of the miscellaneous texts of Hermes that have been translated basically say that this that after the fall of Adam and Eve from from Eden, or the supernal realm, into matter, there's actually some discussion that God felt a little bad for Adam and Eve. So much like the Sefer Yesra that was handed down, that was basically like the roadmap, or it was that which was received, right? But it was the roadmap that essentially would lead the human race back to the garden, or the supernal realm.
A lot of Kabbalists refer back to that as like, for even explaining the spheres going down the tree. They say that's,
Yep.
That's
yep. Well, and that's the whole idea of the tree of life. A lot of people think that is the actual map, as far as to get back to Kether, or the Godhead, Yes. But apparently this emerald tablet was also in the Hermetic texts, basically handed down much like the Sefer Yesra was. And essentially it was the key to long life, because man and woman had brought death into cyclic form. This emerald tablet was basically the key to creating the philosopher's stone that would enhance and extend and heal the individual. So some of the Rosicrucians and the Hermeticists basically believe that this is the reason that all the early patriarchy, as far as Methuselah living 777 years, and that this was the reason they were able to live so long, was because they had this secret of creating this tincture, this white tincture, that they would slowly settle out into the red stone, that is the philosopher's stone, and that led to all the long lifespans that these early pre-Diluvian characters had, right?
That's interesting. You mentioned the red stone. It was red?
Well, so through the course of alchemy, essentially the process is to burn. Okay, so they separate the salts from the oils, right? And then they take the oil and reform that into a crystal, right? And so it generally, through the alchemist activity, it will burn off and go to black. And that's the stone of Negrito, or the prima materia, essentially, right? That's the form that you can make anything out of, right? And then through the course of alchemy, essentially, you transmutate that into a white stone, right? And that has certain properties. That's the moonstone, and that has certain properties that will allow healing on certain levels, but then through the subtle change, once again, you transmutate that into a red stone, which is the philosopher's stone, like in Harry Potter, and that you see commonly in culture, and that's generally, in a lot of cases, a lot of people have tied that to cinnabar, which is a stone you can squeeze and get mercury out of. right?
Cinnabar, did you say, Robert?
Cinnabar. And it was
Cinnabar.
the Mathers, in early America, it was the Mathers family, in as far as Cotton Mathers in the Salem witch trials, that actually had a monopoly on Cinnabar. Yeah. So, it was always related to magical function. But what we need to really talk about is Mercury, or Hermes, or Thoth, or Hermes Trismegistus, the Triskrate, that's known under these various names. So now let's see. If we and Hermes or Thoth was also, when you go back and you read the text, there's a huge link between Thoth and the character of Ham biblically, right? So let's talk about Ham a little bit.
It's going ham.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder where these lines come from and why people why do they even get brought up or brought into existence? Maybe it's like an occult term that someone just we'll get everybody else saying it and not understand what they're saying.
Now, Ham in ancient Hebrew is essentially the letters K, H, M, no vowels. So it was Ham, right? And this is where we get our word chem, or chemistry, or alchemy from. Is from Ham.
Clever.
K-H-M. And that was how Ham originally was spelled, right? And so it was said that Ham, according to the Table of Nations, second son of Noah, was said to have settled Egypt, most likely some parts still standing from pre-Diluvian times, like from ancient Atlantis, right? And Ham, as the letters K, V, M in Hebrew, give us Chemite, or the created race is that essential function. And that is related to the black stone of obsidian. And basically these Chemites and Ham actually took coming out of Ethiopia and brought the gods into Egypt. And basically there was almost a hiding, because in Ethiopia, I guess they really got upset because the Ethiopians were like a simple people before Ham showed up, and he basically brought in the ritual practice and the worship of the gods and the sacrifices and all. And so at a certain point, they got driven out of Ethiopia and almost had to hide, and went into Egypt. And there's a whole diametric chart that you can walk through that shows the interrelationship between the early Ethiopian gods and the Egyptian gods, right? But it was, it was Ham, or KVM, that also is related to the black stone of alchemical workings. So essentially, when Ham came into Egypt, right, I think it was his son Mizraim that basically was the one that set the walls up around Egypt. And so when the flood would come, it would basically contain the water so that it could settle out. And the fine, silty black material from the Nile, that was like the progenitive, life-giving element that basically amended the soil so they could grow crops.
It's like some black goose stuff.
What's that?
Sounds like some black goose stuff, or like that shit from
Prometheus.
That shit from Prometheus, when that guy drinks that black goo and then fucking falls into the water.
So basically, through the building of these walls and collecting this black silt that made the soil fertile, this was considered to be the first work of alchemy in ancient Egypt. As far as using the manifest creation to bend it to your own will, to be able to facilitate growing stronger crops. In the rise of this newly agricultural people, coming from Noah, coming into the walled cities, and now they're beginning to basically bring agriculture into being so they can feed mass populations.
Yeah.
Right? So now, like I said, Ham is in many ways directly related with Thoth, right? And let's see, Thoth the Egyptian was seen in the eyes of the ancient alchemists as relating to the sacred geometrical expression of the tetragrammaton, right? So now with the tetragrammaton, we know that the upward facing triangle is fire, right? And the downward facing triangle is water, right? And when you merge the fire and the water, that creates the steam.
Yeah, the air. And that's even how, like, even going by the tree of life, one side technically will be fire, the other side is water, and then the middle pillar is air. And air rises, which makes sense. So I mean, why would it not be the middle pillar?
Yeah.
Right. So this was the beginning of the process of transmutation, essentially. And when you get into like Cain and the Rakshasas and the Canaanites, and basically the working in volcanic tubes, much like the Mandalorian, I think is a big tie-in with these what were they called in the Greek Isles? But it was basically the idea of creating and working this metal, and forging it to the will of the maker, But again, it comes to this whole idea of transmutation. Like in the course of our life, even yoga is a form of alchemy, because you're basically taking the leaden body and you're stretching it and working it and making gold out of it. It's the temple of man. Well, there's seven different kinds of alchemy, and just the body is one. There's physical alchemy. There's plant alchemy. There's again 7 based on the number of the natural world, right? But now Thoth, let's see. Originally being a Luna or moon god, right? He was measuring the time of the night winds and gave great attention to astrology cycles and astral bodies. And he became the god of the measure and the turning of the heavens. Let's see, the head of sacred wisdom, and as a high magician, he was also counselor to Lord Ra himself. And with Ma'at, he took the 3 nightly voyages of the lunar boat across the night sky. So, Thoth was right in there with the astral heavenly bodies. They basically, and he's accredited with giving us writing. As Hermes, he's accredited with all the books of science and math. And Hermes is in more modern times, in the 11 to 1600s, he's considered more as I forgot where I was going with that, but yeah. So he is basically accredited with the writing, with the manifestation of alchemy, and bringing this whole hermetic philosophy that is related to these emerald tablets.
Would that be like the academic side of it, Robby, do you think?
Well, now the emerald tablet itself, and we'll get later on. We'll get into Isaac Newton's translation of it, but it's more a mystical alchemical text, and from the academic perspective, it's looked at more as kind of just hooey. It's just it doesn't really say. And that's the other thing, when you get into all these texts, much like the tree of life, much like there's the exoteric and then there's the esoteric. So you have the outward function of what it says, right? But the esoteric aspect of it is essentially the hidden or the occulted aspect of it, the hidden aspect of it. And in order to translate, perceive, understand this hidden aspect, you have to you have to be initiated and understand what these words mean, right?
Yeah.
And even in one spot, I saw that, and this was from it was like a 16th century Hermes translation, where they said that in every case where you read mercury, it was actually gold. And in every case where you read silver, it was actually, so mercury, let's see, how was it? But nonetheless, they switched the metals around, right?
Well,
so
to be honest, like you had mentioned before, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I think he does get discredited a lot for being associated with the moon. Thoth does get associated with the moon and Mercury. So like maybe sometimes the change of the metals or like certain things can be trying to show you maybe this is more of the moon aspect instead of the Mercury aspect. And before I forget, something I just want to mention, you're talking about alchemy. You know, and you're talking about Thoth and stuff being associated with that. And this is something that I'm going to put my foot in my mouth now, and I'm going to have to do it. But I actually wanted to, if I have to do it by myself or with Lux, I do want to cover something when it comes to the metals and the way they go on the Tree of Life. My opinion, you can actually see the change, because that is like kind of the first time when you get to Mercury, where Thoth is, where the god Mercury goes, Hod, on the Tree of Life, you know, Mercury's associated with that. That is a metal now that is kind of changed form and gone into liquid.
Right.
So that's already showing you a change already from other things.
Right. Now, if you read Paracelsus, who his alchemical treatises, you know, they go on. I've got one of his big books back there, but he talks about the idea that all the metals come from gold. And that you're able to pull all the individual metals out of gold and then simultaneously be able to systematically put them all back into gold. So it's in very much like Rudolf Steiner, you know, gets into the whole cosmic alchemy as far as the moon itself being born of the earth, you know, and silver coming out of sulfur. So you're getting into these, you know, and it's that's again, back to the, you know, like the high priest, as above, so below, you know. So if you can find these turnings of these systems on a micro level, they're said to work in the exact same manner on the macro level. So once you understand the function of systems, then, you know, you can work within those systems, but to basically transmutate, you know, what those systems are and get the end result that you want out of them.
Interesting. Gold's like the white light of metals, I guess.
Yes. Well, it's the, you know, being, it's like the Aztecs and the Mayans called it the tears of the sun, you know, and it's like in Christian theology, like you have the sangreal or the Holy Grail, and that is the blood of the sun. You know, that is in the cup, the sangreal. Like when you go to a party and there's sangria, that's the blood of the sun, right?
Yeah,
which
true.
is biblically is the blood of Christ that's in the cup for the, you know. So when you get into these words and you start following the etymology of, you know, how they kind of interplay from the past to the present, you know, it's definitely an interesting interplay.
Yeah, it's like ICP always goes on about Shangri-La. And that's where we're going after this shit's over.
Yeah, there is some mention in the Hermetic texts of Shangri-La in a couple places. So, you know, it's Shangri-La is definitely important. Go ahead.
Oh, it was something you mentioned earlier, Robert. You know, about alchemy with like sort of fertilization, so to speak. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure one of the you know, Aztecs or the Mayans, they did something with the soil in a certain area. I'm not quite sure which one it is.
Actually,
would that be the same thing?
I think so. You know, where they're actually amending the soil, they're turning it into this black soil. In the South American cultures, they were actually taking like burnt carbon and amending the soil and creating the super soil. And that's a form of alchemy where you're taking something that's considered lead and you're turning it into something that's gold or useful. So anytime you're transmutating something, you're basically performing alchemy on a physical, on a mental, on a, just depending on what you're using your mind to manipulate and forge and bring into a higher state of being,
You know what's interesting? I'm thinking about that now. Good thing Lee brought it up because I didn't even think about it. Going by Egyptian mythology, you will find a few stories of dudes busting nuts on vegetables of the ground. So I'm like, I mean, isn't that like a story of like Horus and Set, where it's like, I busted a nut on the fucking lettuce you ate and I beat you now, or some shit.
And that was the whole thing with lettuce, man.
Quality.
Yeah.
It
is an interesting story for sure.
Yeah, but it's just
well, even just the few things you've said already, Robbie. Like, I'm thinking of like the black stuff in the soil. If it, like, let's say it could be even like volcanic, right? So like that's why it's so fertile. So like the fire meets the water, it cools down, it makes this black substance. Like the whole thing is an alchemical process.
Well, and we can see this working. Like, we're bringing up all these different instances where we can see this happening, right? Yeah. Now, with the Emerald Tablet itself, one of the things it talks about is the stone rising into the air and then coagulating and then falling. So it does talk about the ascension and the falling process and the different states of metaphysical transmutation.
Well, and what metal rises and falls? Mercury, exactly.
And that's why Mercury is becomes a god, because Mercury is the transmutative agent that is the function of change itself, right?
That's interesting.
And there are some relation to Thoth and 72, and in regard to 1 degree of the turning of the ages, and essentially being the representative aspect of change itself. So, Mercury is definitely, when you follow him, out of Egypt from Thoth into the mystery school, the Chaldean mystery schools, and just bringing that into the Greek and Roman philosophies and the slow transmutation through the movement of the miscellaneous cultures. It's quite interesting to as a line of research to follow that, But now, what in regard to how we were talking about the ascension and the falling of the stone, as far as and it's the idea of, creating that prima materia, that black stone of Negrito, and then refining that into the moonstone or the white stone, and then subtly transmuting that in. So they're basically taking the oils from the salts and then taking that oil and recongealing it into a solid or a crystalline form again, which is much like what they do with cannabis extracts in regard to making diamonds, as far as a crystalline stone being created out of an oil,
Very interesting.
Yeah, as far as and this stone, this healing stone, is said to be, healing for the masses, so and the amount of stuff we're finding out now about cannabinoids, and their healing properties, as far as healing bones stronger, muscles back, there's hundreds of studies now. So, and I'm not saying that diamonds and THC is the philosopher's stone necessarily, but when you look at all these manifest systems, right, it's only as above, so below. It's seeing the system and applying it to all the systems, because all the systems function in this alchemical matter.
You mentioned earlier about it, like a crystal or something, or a diamond, like kind of representing Kether or the Godhead. Not to bring up this movie again, I'm sure some of my listeners are tired of hearing me bring up Twin Peaks and the movie Mother. But in the movie Mother, again, Mother with an exclamation point, the man of the house, he has a crystal that is all the way at the top fucking room that is like precious to him, and that's where he gets all his inspiration, and everything comes from that. And it is a crystal, and that's sitting in it like little thing. Yeah. And
But
then
at the same time, it probably has some sort of a negative hold on him.
well, that I think is his wife, unfortunately.
Quality film, that mate. Quality film.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, you got to go
When
check that out. Yeah.
Oh, well worth it.
Yeah, it's
well
wild.
worth it.
It's wild. You got to pay attention to Robby to it, and you'll probably be like, "Holy fuck!" Like, you definitely check it out when you have time to like actually like pay attention.
What
Do
if,
you know, mate? I think I watched it twice before.
Total
got
Gnostic
got
fucking
it.
movie. Completely Gnostic.
Yeah.
Oh
Nice.
my god. Yeah.
It's brilliantly
Yeah,
made.
she definitely plays the Scarlet Whore for real. If you'll watch like how she basically just isn't happy with the way things are going and keeps trying to change it, and she's like, "Oh, well, I'm not happy with this, so we'll change it again."
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. She goes downstairs and opens up a door, and a frog jumps through, and then all hell breaks loose. I'm like, "Oh, come on, this is like fucking."
Yeah, I've heard
How
that.
obvious can you get now?
Yeah.
Frog as well.
I found it wild too, Robbie. You're saying like the Philosopher's Stone was like a red stone, but then we end up with these green emerald tablets, like red to green.
Well, the green is the method at which it was transmitted to us. So it came to. There's some stories that it actually came from the heavens, already carved on a green, basically stone, right? So and emerald is also kind of arguable. As far as, because it's a green stone, doesn't mean, I mean, there's multiple green stones, and a lot of people actually relate this to the stone of Moldavite. If you know about Moldavite,
I've heard of it. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
So,
have.
and
I
actually-
probably have that in my fucking bedroom. I'm like a box. of
Really,
shit.
mate?
Well, I mean, I didn't throw out all my stones because that shit cost money. I mean, there was some stuff I kept.
So
because
that's a
of the
piece of
value.
Moldavite right there.
Yeah,
Oh,
I have that
it's
myself.
like a darkish green.
Right. It's kind of a mole. It's got a mole. It's well. So now let's talk about how this Moldavite stone
Moldavite.
actually came about and how this.
Robbie.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, mate. Just out of curiosity, is it an expensive stone?
They are rather expensive.
Yeah,
yes.
Moldavite's
Right, okay,
more expensive
okay.
than other ones for sure.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And during, I guess I was just talking.
Oh,
to
real
a friend of-
Moldavite.
Yeah, real Moldavite. If you got to make sure you're getting real Moldavite.
If
There's
it's-
a lot of
if-
people.
if you're in Salem and it's like $3 in like one of their fucking cheap bins, I'm telling you, it's fake.
No, yeah. It's, you kind of got to know your source with your Moldavite. So, you know,
Definitely, you know, when it comes to crystals, you actually like if you get into it, you actually do need to find a reliable source.
oh yeah,
There's so much fake shit out there. It's horrible.
fakes, lots of fake.
Do you know, I once have thought that, mate, and it's good to know.
I used to
Yeah,
go to a
well-
place that like was literally only open at certain hours, and sometimes you'd have to call the guy and he'd go to the store and meet you there. He was like a taxi driver and had like this
Really?
little.
I'll meet you there. That sounds very suspicious.
He was
already.
like, no, he was an Uber driver, and he also was like really just a dude who's into mad crystals. He has like an Instagram and everything, you know.
Yeah,
But it was
yeah.
just like I trusted him, and I was like, if I have to
Yeah.
deal with like fucking hitting him up on Instagram in between his drives, and he's like, all right, I'll meet you at the shop at so and so time. I'd rather do that than buy some fucking piece
I
of
like this
plastic.
dude, mate. I like it.
There's
Go
a lot
hard
of
or go
places-
home, right?
Yeah, out here in the country, there's a lot of places like that where you kind of have to call ahead, you know. So yeah. But now this stone.
He was like, I was buying drugs. Sorry.
Yeah. But this stone Moldavite, right? So when we look at Moldavite, let's see, where's it at? Okay, so here we go. 14.8 million years ago, a meteor crashed to the ground in what is today's Czech Republic, right? And it is estimated that at some 6 trillion megatons was the weight of this meteor when it hit the earth, right? And I actually have a piece of meteor here too, right? This is a meteor slice, which is mostly iron oxide, and this used to be the source for most of the ancient mystical swords, as far as
Really?
because it was a red, like they would basically follow where the meteorites would hit the earth, and then this was already refined iron, so they didn't have to go into the earth and smelt it. It was readily available, because it's just a big chunk of iron from outer space.
Crazy.
There was a place that I went to that when I was funny where I got the Moldavite, they also had, I think, the same thing, whatever that with something else. It's like
Meteors.
yeah, and I was like, they even had like the whole explanation and everything, and I was like, yo, I gotta buy one just to fucking have a piece.
Oh yeah.
What was it called again? What was it called again, mate?
A meteorite.
Yeah, it was like, they were saying it was like part of a meteorite that hit the earth or
Yeah.
something so and so time
So
ago.
now this meteorite, right? It comes and it hits the earth at, what did we say? 6 trillion megatons is what the science estimates, right? And this basically vaporized everything that was there, right? And so what happened was all of the mineral deposits within the earth, in this vaporization, they go up into the air, and the meteor itself, right, is vaporized as well as it hits the earth, right? So here we're talking about again, the idea of fire and water and steam, right? So it comes together, it all vaporizes into this vaporous mist with all these miscellaneous elements and particles within it, right? And then as atmosphere acts upon it, it recongeals into a new stone, right? So basically what you have is the quartzite and different elements. Quartz is one of the most common elements on the planet. Basically in a vaporous state, combining with the meteorite that's in a vaporous state, right? And reforming and becoming the moldavite. So this is a combination of earthly crystalline matter that has been put into vapor form and recombined with the astral element of the meteorite, right? And recongealed into, and then as it rained down, it solidified and just, hit the ground in pieces. And some big pieces, some smaller pieces. And I've even seen some moldavite, like from the Czech Republic, where they've gone in and like done intricate carvings of like the Virgin Mary or Jesus on the cross, or and the stone itself is said to have mystical properties, being the fact that it's partly astral and partly earthly, combined in form. A lot of the people that work with chakra energy and in the whole kind of yoga and what's it called with the Reiki, like Reiki healing,
So like meditation or that kind of aspect.
within the New Age philosophy, right? But the moldavite itself is said, because it's part astral and part earthly, it's said to activate all the chakras in the body.
Yeah, I've heard that too. You know what's really wild with that stone is that, like, when it comes to, I think, like magic or ascension or whatever, when it comes to, kind of like with the Kabbalah and other things. Mm-hmm. Oh, we got General Lee jumping around over here. He just switched screens. I don't know how he did that. It's magic. It's kind of almost.
Sorry, mate.
It's all right. No, you're fine, dude. It's almost telling that story of that stone is like really almost telling the whole story of like the cyclic. I mean, in my opinion, unless you ascend forever, which I'm not promoting, you go out and just don't come back. I think that's really like kind of the story of what happens while you're here. You will ascend, you'll have that knowledge, but then you end up falling back down, to where you are again. It's a constant cycle. Astral,
and you come back to the.
They talk about that too in the show Rings of Power, the one that was just on Prime. There's like the two energies that interact to make mithril.
What did you think of it?
I was going to bring mithril up earlier.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Well, and think of the word itself, myth, real, right. Taking something that's mythical and making it real. So that is alchemical within itself.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's
crazy.
Yeah. So now if we go back in art history, right? If we go back as far as 25,000 years ago, we have you ever heard of the Venus of Willendorf?
Nope.
No, so this is an early, like a voluptuous goddess type figure. And you've probably seen it, but she's got the giant breasts.
Oh
and-
yeah.
And it's like a green kind of colored.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Of like a biblical, goddess figure, right?
Yeah.
But that Venus of Willendorf is actually carved out of Moldavite. Right.
Interesting. Is this, Robbie, is this a pleasant god, or is it one of it's not carries a bad name?
Yeah, we don't really know. I mean, because it's so
okay.
far back, all we really have is the sculpture itself. But I think that the giant breasts and the giant hips like preclude like birthing and nurturing and the idea of the mothering quality. So I think it's a more positive. But at the same time, we can see that already 25,000 years ago that this stone it pertains to mystical qualities if they're using it to carve their goddess forms.
Yeah.
Was it used, Robbie, for fertility?
Female Sasquatch.
That's a fertility goddess, yeah.
Yeah, but like, was the stone used for fertility stuff?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know.
It's,
Okay.
it's hard to say.
You know, even the shape of that thing that you were talking about before, and like the reason why I knew exactly what you meant, and it wasn't because like, oh, she's got tits and ass on her. It's because like I honestly think, and it could either be the Matrix representing itself in the world, but I do think that our glass figure, there's something behind that, like in a sense as well. You know?
Oh yeah.
Well, there
That's
you go.
showing time, that's showing birth, like you said, but I think it's like, I don't know if those things were carved for that reason to show something else, but I do think that whole, just that whole shape.
Relating the hourglass figure to the divine feminine. And the
Time wouldn't exist unless you got birthed into this world, which is all feminine
and that's
energy.
all based around time.
Yeah.
You know, and the aspects of time.
From the moment
Brilliant
you're born, you
connection
begin
there,
to
mate.
die. Right?
Yeah, you have an expiration date as soon as you pop out.
Sorry, Lee.
The brilliant connection that way with the hourglass.
Yeah.
You just don't think of it, do you? But that's
No. Well, that's why it's good to have these conversations.
Yeah, that's why I love
You know?
it.
Yeah. Now, again, I have here that the sacred emerald tablet was said to have been fallen from the heavens, already inscribed with the secrets of prima materia and the secrets of transmutation for the philosopher's stone. Let's see. It's where are we at here? So I have part of Isaac Newton's translation here, and we'll get to the full translation later on in the show. But Isaac Newton says it extracts the light from the heights and descends to the earth, containing the power of the above and the below. For it switched the light for the lights, therefore the darkness flees from it. So that's part of Isaac Newton's translation of the Emerald Tablet.
I mean, it sounds like enlightenment, and I mean, just explaining experiences I've had of enlightenment, just visually.
Right.
I mean,
and it also talks about the, how what does it say? It extracts the light from the heights and then descends to the earth. That's the exact story we just told of the Moldavite.
Yeah.
As well. So, and again, we have to see how within the ideas of alchemy and the ideas of transmutation, that these systems are alive and working in every aspect around us from the Hermetic alchemical standpoint.
You had mentioned something before, and I didn't say anything because you're doing your thing. But now to kind of get back to this, I guess it will fit here a little bit. Even before, when you mentioned about extracting the salt from the oil, I was just like thinking already like separation from earth.
Right.
Is that just? I mean, who's to say? I've also wondered, and it's just my opinion, even with people that are considered alchemists, did they just tell a very occultic story using elements to do it? Did they really actually turn something into something, or was that their way of saying, I understand occultism, I've done the transmutation in my own mind?
Right.
Did they even actually have that whole setup? You know?
Yeah. And again, they tell you that alchemy is not what you think it is.
Yes, exactly. That's what the
Over.
thing is. Yeah.
And that you have to be initiated and know the secrets of the words in order to have an understanding. And that's the whole thing. You know, when you get into the idea of, you know, every symbol has 7 meanings and each meaning has 7 meanings, then you start working on these multiple recombinant levels of multiple types of understanding, all within, you know, it's a very fractaline kind of philosophy.
Yes.
You know?
It's a very good way to explain it, Robbie.
Yeah. So now,
oh, and by the way, real quick, if anybody watching, I totally forgot to mention this earlier. When I started, I am wearing Robbie's shirt right now. Totally forgot to plug that.
I like that shirt.
Yes, this is his shirt. You have to go check out his art. He has sent me some amazing stuff. I really need to post more of it, but definitely go check out his stuff. I totally forgot to mention that at the beginning.
Yeah, no worries, man. But those are out of print now. So.
Oh,
yeah. I might have a couple laying around if I can look, but. Yeah, they had their cycle, so
Nice. Well, I even feel more special now. Thank you.
So now, one of the legends of this emerald tablet, right? It tells us that when Lucifer fell during the wars in the heaven, that the archangel Michael swung his sword and knocked the crown or the kether stone of Lucifer's crown loose, right? And this stone of excellence fell to earth. And this
stone of excellence.
This is cool as fuck.
Right? It gets crazy, man. It gets crazy when you start watching it. Yeah. So basically, in the wars in the heavens, Michael knocked loose the kether stone from Lucifer's crown. And this was the emerald tablet.
What?
That fell to earth.
What's the size of his head like? He's got a huge, like an engine head. Fucking massive.
And Michael has a flaming sword, so I fire again.
Right. So but it's just
well, you know who I don't know if this is correct or not. Now, and I hate to interrupt you because now Teresa mentioned a flaming sword. Yeah. I'm watching the show Good Omens. It's on Prime now. It shows Israfel. The angel Israfel is, if you go and look up, I forgot the name of the Libra or whatever, Crowley's invocation of Israfel, you're invoking Thoth. You're invoking Tahuti. He was given a fucking, the end of the world's coming and he goes back up to heaven kind of like to check in and they're like, well, where's the flaming sword we gave you? And he's like, he ended up giving away to the humans.
Yeah.
But I don't know how truthful that story is, but if that is true, technically Israfel or, that version of Thoth had a flaming sword. I don't know if that helps with anything, but.
Yeah. Well, and that's a lot of this gets into the idea, almost Promethean in quality, as far as like giving the sword to humans, the flaming sword, the idea of this etheric knowledge of Lucifer's crown, it's the idea of the mysteries coming to the human and giving us the essential keys to open the doorways into the eternal ether of time, space, and the cosmos. Yeah.
That's really weird. And just like real quick, if anybody is watching that or whatever, if you haven't heard of it, Good Omens, I think it's pretty fucking funny, actually. But I think if there's people here that are into like occultism or whatever, or understand this stuff. If you watch that show, to me, you have first off the demon. His name is Crowley. Crowley's already playing Thoth already.
Crowley's in everything.
He's already playing Thoth in his character. Yeah. He's always playing Queen in his car, which to me
was one of his secret names too.
Which to me, I think is him symbolizing the hermaphrodite that goes on hold where Mercury is, where Thoth is. And now you have Israfel, which is his buddy in the angel. No, you're actually watching, in my opinion, two different sides of the same fucking character. Having a story, because you have Crowley, he's playing Thoth, and then you have Israfel, but Israfel is Thoth just in a different name.
Israfel.
So it's like how
Israel fell.
So in my opinion, you're watching like the polar opposites of the same fucking thing.
Yeah.
And they're just two
it's
different characters.
It's almost like the balance of it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And they're both trying to find the Antichrist and raise it so it doesn't destroy the earth. Because they actually both think, this is crazy. You got a demon who's like, but you have to kill the kids? What about the whales and the dolphins? You're like, what the fuck? Good omens. You're like, yo, what the fuck? Why is the demon have more of like logic when it comes to the end of the world than the fucking angels do? Because the angels are like, oh, well, we need war and we need to win. And Crowley's like the one like, why do these people got to get fucked? Like, why are we fucking the humans? Because we need to go to war.
Well,
it's fucking hilarious because it's just like so weird. Like Crowley's more of the emotional one, actually, which is so funny.
Right.
The good actors as well that play, aren't they, mate?
It's really good.
Yeah, good actors.
Nice. So now let's see this. This stone of excellence, or the Lapitus Exilis, right? Being delivered into the minds of human, like Prometheus, symbolizing Venus and the morning star, symbolizing Quicksilver, the secret knowledge not allowed to the human minds, as the symbol of omniscience, is represented sometimes by the all-seeing eye, is the stone that the builder refused, is the secret cornerstone of the Temple of Solomon, and is the occulted cornerstone of the temple or the castle of Edinburgh, right? Oh. So again, with Edinburgh, we have the pieces of the meteorite that came down, that were basically broken, that was said to be a goddess form that came into reality, that was broken up, and these pieces were distributed. And some of those meteorite pieces ended up in the foundation stone at the Castle of Edinburgh, which is where we see the 33-degree Scottish Freemasonry coming out of, right? And then some of those stones also ended up in the Kaaba stone in Mecca. So we can see, again, back to the idea of these meteorites, having sacred qualities,
Especially with the connection to Edinburgh Castle.
Yeah. Which is where they will crown, chances are that's where they'll crown Prince Charles when he becomes king, and they'll haul out the Stone of Destiny for that, Jacob's pillow, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe before we got to see if there's any like wide mass like cult deaths before a meteorite hits the earth. Maybe all those souls go up together at the same time and fall back down as a meteorite.
Well, look at what was it?
You got to see if there was something after Heaven's Gate, if anything hit the earth.
Gate. That's what I was going to say. The meteor, and they thought that that was like a gateway to heaven, that meteorite, man. So
that's what I was thinking about all that way you were saying that.
Yeah, the meteorite, man. Now this same legend, it was also said to be cut by a faithful angel into the shape of a bowl. Being essentially behind the idea of the baptism of wisdom and the birth of the Grail legends.
Grail, yeah.
Yeah, there's some talk that the original Holy Grail was actually either a Moldavite carved or a beryl, being emerald, carved bowl that was actually a green bowl. So there is some tie-in with the original emerald tablet and the Holy Grail itself.
Yeah, I should not wait.
All sorts of weird shit right now.
So now there's a painter, Julius Evola, and he's an Italian painter and philosopher. But he tells us in his researches that it was transported to Montségur in southern France in a fortress of the Pyrenees, which Lucifer's armies besieged in order to return the stone to their leader's crown, but was saved by knights which had hid it away within a mountain. So...
More Lord of the Rings, though, dwarves with their treasures in the mountains.
Yeah.
Bits of themselves.
Yeah. So now in the 1200s, Frater Albertus Magnus working in the text of Plato of Travola, which are Latin manuscripts, declares that the Greek Egyptian pharaoh Alexander the Great had found the tablet, and in 311 BCE or BC, when headed north to Cappadocia and Mesopotamia, according to some, he took the treasure from the pillars of Hermes and stored them in an underground cavern in Cappadocia. So at one point, Alexander the Great, who was the pharaoh of Egypt when the Romans basically went in and took Egypt, was said to actually have this emerald tablet in his possession.
Yeah.
Rob,
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I'm trying to look it up. It might be easier just to ask you. Did this guy, this name that you just mentioned, has he put out his own like kind of grimoires as well?
I think so, yeah.
What was his name again?
Julius Evola, J-U-L.
Oh, wasn't there a Frater Albertus or something you mentioned prior to that?
Oh, yeah, Albertus Magnus. Frater Albertus. Albertus Magnus.
Yeah, no, I know for a fact, like during my career, like studying stuff and reading shit, I've come across something of his. I know for a fact. I just wanted to. I thought it might have been a specific grimoire or something, or like maybe the Olympian shit, but I could be wrong. Sorry.
No, not at all. So now when Alexander the Great was, said to basically be in possession of this, and he left it in the underground cavern in Cappadocia. After that, he went on to conquer the territories of Babylonia and India at the time, right? And then he died on his return trip in 323 BC, and his final wish was to be buried in Egypt, but his tomb has never been found because his body was actually hijacked during transport back to Egypt. So the body of Alexander the Great kind of disappears, and the legend of the Sacred Emerald Tablet again picks up in Cappadocia in 32 AD. So we're talking 355 years later, right? And in Cappadocia, a young boy named Balinus was exploring caves outside of Tyana and rediscovered this lost text, right? And he took a vow of silence at the time and set to absorb this sacred material, looking for sages on ancient Hermeticism, and he became known as Apollonius of Tyana.
Apollonius
of Tyana. And Apollonius of Tyana, after he discovered this text, he was credited with having like vast mental abilities. He had sort of ESP and telepathy that he was working with. He was said to be able to heal people.
What is this after they found this out? It's like suddenly got these powers.
Right.
Real quick, Robbie, I'm sorry to make you look at it again or repeat it again. You mentioned something about a vow of silence and then transmutation or something like that you just read?
Yeah, so basically once he found the Emerald Tablet, he took a vow of silence. And basically all he did was study this Emerald Tablet and Hermeticism. And through the course of that, he began to have these inherent abilities to be able to, have telepathy and have healing abilities. And basically they said he taught people with his great wisdom, after this point. It said acquiring great magical skills and abilities to heal, inspiring everyone he met with his wisdom.
Well, the reason I asked is because, silence is the virtue of Binah, which is the sphere, in my opinion, where the magic starts to happen. So, like, maybe even putting in, like, the vow of silence. Like, those are all little things I think can be dropped to try to explain.
Silence is golden.
Yeah, I mean, and the emerald, yeah, very good. That would be a step up, yes, from emerald, because even emerald would be on the bottom of the left pillar, and the silence would be the total top of the left pillar.
Yeah.
So I could see
so
how
that's enacting the highest function of that pillar itself.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
I just find it funny too. Like, remember Prince created that band Apollonia 6?
Yep.
Well, Prince, I think Prince was playing Toth or Hode as well.
Right?
He was the alchemical agent of change.
For sure.
Totally.
For sure. He totally.
He even represented himself as a hermaphrodite with his.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Exactly. Very much.
Even taking his symbol, how you can see Mercury and Venus kind of mixed in there.
Mixed in. Oh yeah.
Chicks with dicks.
Well, and that's when you get into the purple, right? The purple, the merging of the cool and the warm.
Yes.
And that's on the far extremes of the color spectrum.
Yeah.
So it's moving into the unseen.
I mean, sometimes that's even used. Purple is used as showing like ascending the power and the glory on the tree of life. The red and the blue sphere. You put that together, you get purple.
Right.
Purple is also associated with chesed, but like a higher arc that is like specified to be closer to God. So I think it's showing you like going up and the energies merging, but ascending, not descending.
Right.
So the
And
purple.
well, now we also have the Tyrrhenian purple, Tyrrhenian purple.
Yes.
That was in the Phoenician, But
was it you that had mentioned that even getting the color purple, I think, like to draw with or paint with was even like fucking expensive or some weird ass, like people got it from snails or some weird shit.
Yeah, they had to crush up these shellfish, and basically from the shells, and that was the Phoenicians. So after the Habiru or the Abiru left Egypt, as far as the Exodus, they came down into Cana, and basically that's when Canaan history ends and Phoenician history begins. And Phoenicia is, after the 40 years of the desert and the journey into the underworld, Phoenicia is the phoenix, and it's the first representation of the phoenix. Right? Mm-hmm. And these Phoenician people basically made their money with the Tyrian purple. Where they would crush up these shellfish, and then through a process, they would basically boil it and use certain, again, back to alchemy, certain agents to bring the color out. And then they would, and the only place you could get these purple robes, which in Rome, all these, the aristocracy, the Caesar and his family wore purple.
I was just going to say that, Robbie, Queen Lizzie, the former queen, she wore quite a lot of purple.
Yep, and it's actually kind of a scarlet purple. So it has an association with the infrared and the ultraviolet, as well as the royal purple and the scarlet of the blood, as far as the bloodline. So you have multiple factors interrelated within this color of this Phoenician purple. But yeah, so let's see. Now this, and again, the tablet was said to be buried for safekeeping in a vault in Egypt after Apollonius of Tyana had found it. And this was on the Gaza Plateau where it was supposedly buried. And many reports around the year 400, but no trace has ever been found since. And generally, no one knows if such an object even existed, right? So that's kind of where some of the texts lead it, right? But let's see, it says, and there's been numerous expeditions that have been made in search of this emerald tablet. And the records say that Alexander the Great actually brought the tablet to Heliopolis, where it was put on display. And
that's interesting that you just said that. Before I forget, just stories that I've heard and maybe things that I've seen, the way I saw it, there is a time in the OTO when you may be reenacting something and you're on your way to Heliopolis and you end up getting picked up by somebody else. Yes.
Really?
Yes. Some say that might be in the Minerval degree. I'm not sure, but
There's got to be some connection there. You think
you're on your way to Heliopolis and somebody scoops you up.
Yeah, I don't believe they're just doing that for the sake of it.
Yeah, I don't think it was just like, we'll just say they're going to Heliopolis.
Yeah. Now this in Heliopolis, it was put on display where a panel of high priests worked to translate it into Greek at this point, right? And the scribes made copies by hand and constructed a college in the city of Alexandria because of this emerald tablet, right? And they basically built the college to house the emerald tablet and to study the ancient Hermetic texts that they could get a hold of, right? And let's see, and it was these Greek translations that sparked Hermeticism in Prussia and the Islamic world, tying Hermes and Thoth to pre-Diluvian thought.
Really interesting.
Yeah, right. So I love this stuff. I don't know any of this shit.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, well, and that's the whole thing is, the tablet itself is in, we talked about that one part with Isaac Newton's translation, but it's not very long. When we get to reading the whole thing, it's, and it's just in another page. We'll read the whole thing here. So now the earliest written account of the Emerald Tablet itself, and that's not tablets, just a single tablet, right? Is credited to Kitab Sir al-Ka Laka wa Santa Taibat Ita. And that translates as the secret book of creation and the cause of nature, which is basically one of the earliest Persian translations of the text.
Persian translation.
That's interesting.
And this is purported by many scholars to be letters from Aristotle to his student Alexander the Great.
Okay, that's interesting because I just recently was diving into the possibility that like the Black nobility families are actually Persian families.
There's definitely links. I mean, you figure all the movement coming out, as far as the
that too.
Right? Well, and dating back to like Phoenicia and like that whole part of the world, obviously.
So in the Book of Invasions that me and Lee just covered on Subconscious Realms, I basically found in the Book of Invasions that after the fall of Babel, that they actually set up a school. Nimrod the Younger set up a school and basically schooled all these different bloodlines, the 72 in the Mesopotamia, or the 88 different languages in the Ugaritic, and basically taught all these families these new languages, and then sent them into the regions of Europe. So basically it was Phineas Farsid who basically in Egypt went to the Tower of Babel after it fell and taught the early, basically what became the Furbolg, or the early, the
Fomorians and
the Fomorians. Well, the Fomorians, I think the Fomorians were already there, and the Furbolg came in, and then there was the battle. But it shows them actually taking and constructing and teaching, and I think they actually had all the children and the grandchildren, and actually separated them out and raised them in the language itself.
It's
with
that Book of Invasions, Robbie. It's like I don't think you realise how significant the book actually is.
Right, right. But nonetheless, that goes to show that these bloodline families coming from when the languages were separated, that they actually, schooled them and then sent them into the regions to take over and supersede the cultures that were already there. So I think that's 100% the case, Teresa.
Yes,
Wow.
mate.
Interesting. Yeah.
So now, let's see. Now these letters from Aristotle to Alexander the Great, being this potentially the Emerald Tablet, right? Is also it has relations to the Secretum Secretorium. If you've ever heard of that book.
I have.
Yeah.
I've heard of that name, and that's why my head popped up. I was like, oh.
Yeah, and that's the secret book of secrets, right? So, and that the secret book of secrets is also what the 2006 best-selling book, The Secret, was based upon.
Oh, wow.
You know what? And you know the reason why I actually know what that is I could be wrong. I don't know if it's The Ninth Gate, but there was a movie where they were showing a bunch of books, and I saw that name, and I had to look it up, and I was like, oh, what the fuck? That shit's actually real.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I did see that actually in a movie. A movie. That's how I found out about it.
That was going through because Lee and I are going through a lot of the Irish and the Celtic stuff, and I came across the Irish Book of Shadows, and I was like, ooh. I read about 40 or 50 pages out of it, just the part on the Fomorians, basically. But yeah, there's these old books, man. There's just it's
something about something.
Yeah, it's wild, man. When you start going, and it's like H.P. Lovecraft, basically being like growing up almost as a latchkey kid of sorts, had access to his father's library, who was deep into occultism and had a lot. So as H.P. Lovecraft as a kid, he's like 6, 7 years old, just reading these ancient occulted mythic texts. And they're like haunting his dreams. And I think that's the reason why he potentially became the writer that he became, because of these ancient texts. It's fun stuff though, man, for sure. Let's see. Now this Secretum Secretorium has been given the status as one of the magnum opuses of the ancient world, and it's said to contain the sum of all knowledge, again, for those able to understand its hidden meaning. And so I also have here now Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz, who was a theosophist, but it's and he has within the Wizard of Oz, he has the Emerald City, so I think he's also hinting, and they're basically on a journey to that sacred knowledge or that Emerald City.
On the Gold Road.
On the Golden Road, exactly. So it's and she was supposed to have silver slippers, but they
slippers.
Yeah, she was supposed to have silver slippers, but they changed it to ruby because of the new invention of the Technicolor, and they popped off the screen more than the silver slippers.
Oh.
So now you're getting into silver slippers and Gold Road and the green alchemical. So again, we're going back to these base functions of these alchemical elements, so even Frank Baum with The Wizard of Oz is telling us a tale of alchemy.
Oh, yeah. Even when it comes to making talisman, I've mentioned this plenty of times, when it comes to making talismans, with the Tree of Life and stuff with the Kabbalah, the flashing color for green, like if I was making a talisman for a Netzach and the main color for that is green, if I was to add any other color into it to bring it pop, and because it shows it's associated also with that other sphere, there's a little bit of each in that one, like a yin and a yang kind of sense. The flashing color would be red.
Right.
And the same thing for Mars, if I was doing, or Gabora, if I was doing a thing for that, it would be red and the flashing color would be green. Yes.
Right. Now from an
there's a reason for that.
Yeah, when you look at the color wheel itself, right? And basically there's supposed to be 7 colors, 3 primary colors. But when you cross the color wheel, the way it's set up in a wheel, right? Red is directly opposed to green. So they're complementary colors. As far, and it's just interesting how color theory, how like all this stuff, comes down to these numbers of 7 that line up with this ancient philosophy. But at the same time, I just think that's how it has naturally been built through the course of history, because again, it's the macro micro systems. It's understanding how these systems work and only using them in accordance with how they work with on the earthly plane.
Totally.
I agree. Yes, very much.
Yeah, it's getting cold, huh?
Yeah, it got a little chilly up in here now.
Yeah, we went down below. It was 70 last week, and we had like below freezing last night. So
yeah, it's snowing here right now. The first
Really?
looks like it'll be the first significant one.
Yeah.
It's not
coming.
stopping.
Winter is coming.
Thank you, Ned Stark.
Oh man, and we gotta wait like almost 2 more years for that to come back too.
I love it.
So let's see. Now, this glossy green beryl stone, relating to the concept of eternity as the color of regeneration in nature. This being why Osiris of Egyptian Hermeticism, lord of the underworld, and who embodies the resurrection, when the blazing Sirius star would rise in Egypt, bringing forth the fresh green shoots of generation, being emerald green, is the reason why Osiris's color is emerald green. So, when we look at this idea of the emerald tablet, and back to the idea of how you were saying the green, it's the idea of, that generative function of, ascending and moving, between planes. Let's see.
Well, and a lot of shit when it grows out of the soil, like the grass that's everywhere, it comes out green.
Yeah, and especially in the spring,
trees sprout up green,
young green, emerald green shoots, coming forth as far as the color of Osiris, and then the rebirth as Horus, Now it wasn't. Let's see, the sacred magic opus did not make its way into the Western realm of thought until John of Seville in Spain translated a Latin copy for a Pomeranian queen. So now we have the Hermeticism and this idea coming through John of Seville into Pomerania, which is, right next to ancient Bohemia. So it's just interesting to see the flow of this material and, getting into the tarot of the Bohemians and kind of, relating that back into the Egyptians. So we see this current moving, slowly, into the modern personification, right?
You mentioned the tarot of the Bohemians. Isn't that almost like a completely different tarot deck in a sense?
It's now the Tarot of the Bohemians was written by Pappas and translated by author Edward Waite, but it's said within the Bohemian Tarot that it is the oldest book in existence.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that one, but I know I came across some sort of tarot deck that it's not even the same amount of cards of what we normally use, and it's completely different. I don't know if it's that one or that. No.
Yeah, and we know Aleister Crowley, move some of the elements of the tarot around, and then you get into when tarot became popular in France, it did kind of get chopped up in different ways. The symbols got played with a little bit.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So, and if you trace the tarot back, it goes all the way back to the Hyperboreans, coming with the ancient gifts and bringing them to mankind. As far as what was the Slag of Lugh, which was the sword that, you know, fought battles, and then the cauldron, which became the cup, which was basically always had food in it for everyone to eat. And, you know, there's you know, that's as far back as, but then there's also elements within Eastern theology as far as Asian tarot. They had like a 7-base system stacked on sevens that some people also relate to.
Now, you mentioned Hyperborea before, or however you said that. Well, can you explain?
The Hyperboreans?
Yeah, just real quick. Like, what is that? Because I have something with the word A, with the letter H, and I think this seems to fit that again.
Right. The Hyperboreans were essentially like the remaining characters from the fall of Atlantis that basically came to give the tools to humankind to repropagate the earth.
Yeah, there was a thing where I was starting to notice a lot of gods with the letter H seem to have that aspect of themselves of being able to go in between both. And I've often wondered, is the letter H itself showing you like the attached to both
worlds?
Yeah. It's just that when I hear it now, I'm going to bring it up more on my show, so I can start proving my point more.
Yeah, kind of like the word history starts with an H as well, connecting time space. Yeah.
Robert, you know, the tarot, was the John D. Enochian tarot, did they have a considerable amount more cards than a normal set?
Yeah.
Or was that something else?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the John Dee's tarot. I mean, I went through and read all the stuff about the Enochian magic and, you know, the scrying and bringing forth these different, you know, morbid, fiery, like all the different entities and the descriptions that he saw. Yeah. That's some fun reading, man, if anybody's interested in the Enochian stuff, you know. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. Yeah.
Nice one, mate.
So let's see. Okay, so now we're gonna get into the Isaac Newton translation, right? And it says, let's see, found in the papers of Sir Isaac Newton in the late 1600s, and this is Isaac Newton's direct translation from the Greek translations that were said to be done at that College of Hermeticism from the original golden tablet that Alexander the Great had, right?
Right.
And so it says, "'Tis true, without error, certain and most true. That which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below. To do the miracles of the one thing, and as all things have been and arose from one, by the meditation of one, so all things have their birth from this one thing by adaptation. The sun is its father, the moon its mother, the wind hath carried it in its belly, the earth is its nurse. The father of all perfection in this whole world is here. Its force of power is entire, if it be converted into earth. Separate thou the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross, sweetly with industry. It ascends from the earth to the heavens, and again it descends to the earth. It receives the force of things, superior and inferior. By this means you shall have the glory of the whole world, and thereby all obscurity shall fly from you. Its force is above all force, for it vanquishes every subtle thing and penetrates every solid thing. For this are and I do come, admirable thereof, the means or process is here in this."
That was a fucking lot.
And that's what the Emerald Tablet is said to say.
Crazy.
Yeah,
you think
that was a fucking lot right there.
Yeah.
Must mean something. Must.
I mean, I think it's still showing transmutation by like the words it uses. You know, the wind, the air. You know.
And well, and again, like we talked about the Moldavite and you know, it ascending and coming down, it very much and the fact that you have to separate out, you know, and the earth, when you get into Paracelsus and alchemy, the earthly element is sulfur. So somehow you're pulling gold, you're separating the sulfur from the gold. And once you have, and the alchemists talk about there's 3 different types of gold. There's the astral gold, which is like more etheric and is actually the gold that's at the center of the sun. That's the most pure form of gold, like in all of creation. And then there's like a subtle form of gold, and then there's like a more kind of bastardized kind of, so and it's descending levels basically of these different types of gold, but what is gold? I mean, and is it a metaphor? Are they physically all the kings through the ages that have tried to get the alchemists to turn lead into gold, or you have the story of Rumpelstiltskin there, where the maiden is using the spinning wheel to spin flax or straw into gold, for the king. It's
the hermetic, even the hermetic symbol of sulfur is used sometimes.
Oh yeah.
So.
Well, and you look at John Dee's little symbol of Mercury there, and how it combines, multiple aspects of different symbols into one, and being that transmutative object of change in itself. And the alchemists actually have, they call it, instead of like the rainbow of Noah after the flood, where he promised not to flood the earth anymore, right? The alchemists have what they call the alchemical rainbow, where essentially through the course of burning off these different materials, it will rate the process of transmutation itself will irradiate and glow different colors. So when you see in the alchemical texts, you'll see a lot of times a rainbow around a phoenix, or some of these different, things. Did somebody else just come in?
Yeah, I got to get rid of him.
But it's definitely interesting, man. Getting into all that stuff,
Robby, the part where you just read the translation and it said, by this means you shall have the glory of the whole world.
Right.
All right. Okay. So, like in the beginning of when you were talking about the Philosopher's Stone and it saying that it's like a red stone, I was just like, oh, it's like the Rothschilds, because isn't their name mean like red shield or red stone?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I was like,
oh, see, I like that.
It's interesting though. Maybe they even like possess it or something, or they've used it. Like who knows, or mastered it somehow. Like mastered this process, and now they like basically own the world.
Right.
I mean, even before when you were reading that stuff, I mean, I know it's fucking weird that popped up in my head, but like you mentioned something about like a nurse, right? And like I started thinking of like hospital like colors and uniforms, and you always get that red and white.
Yeah.
Well,
and red and
just
white
like even
is
fucking Coca-Cola, red, white, and then the black pillar, that fucking black shit that you fucking drink.
Yeah.
That will definitely cause chaos and change on your body if you keep drinking
on your body. Well, and also when you have the alchemical transmutation, the first function is the white stone. The second function is the red stone.
Yeah, the red stone is chaos and change.
Yeah, all of this goes back to the 2 upper and lower Egypt being the red and the white. So it's pretty wild stuff, man. When you start tying all these different miscellaneous links and how everything overlaps and reverberates and echoes, and it's
Well, apparently the Rothschilds had a red house and a green house.
Imagine.
I don't know. I just looked it up. It's so weird.
So
weird.
The White House, right? The White House.
Yeah.
In DC. In Egypt, the White House was the mint for the state where they made the money. So,
really?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
so yeah.
That's interesting.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see, where do we want to go now? Yeah, I guess we could start on the emerald tablets now of Thoth the Atlantean. And I don't know. Is it cool if we go over 2 hours?
What about you guys? I mean, I could probably go about until about probably like 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
I can probably go till about another 20 minutes, mate. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Unless you want to wrap it up here and then do the other one as a part two. If you want to do that.
yeah. Maybe we should do that.
Yeah. Because if we get into that, maybe we could all be fresh and ready
And
to
then
go.
that'll be a nice dividing
brilliant.
line between the Emerald Tablet and the Emerald Tablets.
Sounds
Yes.
good to me.
Yes.
Yes, I'll make sure I specify
Nice one.
in the names tablet and tablets. And
Don't fuck it up.
Yes. I won't screw it up.
Thanks,
And I won't
everybody.
forget that I recorded this either. Definitely.
Well, no, I might be able to finish it though in half an hour, man.
Well, you don't have to rush it either. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah,
up to
but
you.
I would hate to like do a whole nother show.
Okay. All right.
You know.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Okay.
Let's go.
Let's go. So, these mysterious emerald tablets of Thoth the Atlantean, right? And they were said translated by a character named Dureel or Dorel, which is Doreal or Do Real, right? And it's released with the authority of the Brotherhood of the White Temple. And
The White Temple.
yeah, so and here I have my copy, one of my copies that I've had over the years. And it's, I would say let's just go through and look at a couple of the excerpts. So, and when we're looking at this book, as far as the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean, the whole concept and story behind it all is this idea that Thoth or Tahuti basically was taught how to look into the mysteries, or he's able to peer into the ethos of all time space.
Well,
Kinda
don't they say Thoth was there to watch the world get created anyway? Or he states that, that he saw the
Yeah, they
creation
state
of the
that
world.
in different places for sure. But it's the idea that he's basically been in these cycles of all of time space, and that now he's bringing these sacred mysteries, to mankind, and it gets into the ideas of transmigration of the soul, as far as ascending through the multiple realms of heaven. It gets into the idea of life eternal, and the fact that this is just a temporary way station in regard to our whole of existence. So and I will say, if you've never read this book, this is one of the most fun books to read, as far as just the information within it, and like the concepts, as far as you're going through it, and your conscious mind and the way you think about things, and opening realms of thought within your mind. And I've actually heard that if you read the whole thing in one sitting, it could potentially put you into a state of samadhi. So,
Ooh.
That's interesting.
yeah.
Samadhi.
Yeah, and I actually have a friend that he's using a bunch of DMT, but that was his attestation as far as reading the Emerald Tablets. So here, we'll read a couple sections, a couple little parts out of this. In the great city of Kior, on the island of Undal, in a time far past, I began this incarnation. Not as the little men of the present age did the mighty ones of Atlantis live and die, but rather from aeon to aeon did they renew their life in the halls of Amente, where the river of life flows eternally onward. So, and it gets into this whole thing about the halls of Amente, and this is comparatively, as far as the circumpunct with the circle with the dot in the center, it talks about this almost like a throne room where this flower of life blossoms, and that fiery flaming light shooting up from the center, right? They build these 32 thrones around this beam of effulgent light that is
32 thrones, did you say, Robbie, then, mate?
32 thrones around
32
one.
thrones.
We always have to take this into consideration when we're looking at stars and wheels, and it's because essentially you have the function of the shape itself, but you also have the center point of the shape. So 32 around one is 33.
I've often thought that about certain like odd numbers in magic. Is it really just like the even number and then counting self? You know what I'm saying? Is adding the one.
And that's a way to occult information.
Yeah, I do think so, yeah.
You know, because then you think it's somebody asked me about one of the paintings I did recently, and I should probably go back on and add it, but they asked me why was there 7 pillars on the wheel, essentially, right? And I went into I went into all the sacred sevens as far as the manifestation of the natural realm that is the physical realm of matter that we live in, with the 7 continents, the 7 colors, all the 7 musical notes. It just goes on but that's the whole thing. It's the 7 around the one, around the manifestation of the whole, which is the 8, which is the Ogdoad, which becomes, eternity. So, and that's the whole thing when you're digging into symbolism, and you have to look at the fact that it's symbol upon top of symbol upon top of symbol upon top of symbol, at least 7-fold.
Even what you just said,
a really good alchemist.
Even what you just said right there, like going with the tree again, the tree of life, going back to where I said that Prince would fit on Hode. Directly across it would be Chesed, and the symbol for that now is a king on his throne.
Right.
So, like, you're even seeing, like, the prince going to a king.
King, yeah. Yeah, and again, transmutation, ascension.
Transmutation, yeah.
And you have to go through the balance and beauty of Chesed to get...
Right. And it's like the fairy queen had to get the fairy king had to get the fairy queen to fall in love. Otherwise, he couldn't ascend. So it's that idea of subtle energies that manifest and move. It's so let's see. Now this is where Thoth or Tahuti talks about the halls of Amente. He says, deep in the earth's heart lie the halls of Amente, far neareth the island of sunken Atlantis. Halls of the dead and halls of the living, batheth in the fire of the infinite all. Far in a past time, lost in space-time, the children of light looked down on the world, seeing the children of men in their bondage, bound by the force that came from beyond. They knew that only by freedom from bondage could man ever rise from the earth to the sun. Down they descended and created bodies, making the semblance of men as their own. The masters of everything said after their forming, we are they who are formed from space dust, partaking of life from the infinite all, living in the world as children of men, like and yet unlike the children of men.
That's pretty deep.
This is just fascination upon fascination, isn't it?
Right?
And not to sound crazy, and I can't even think of trying to think of the best way to word this. This will sound a little weird, but I was on Ellie speed bumps yesterday, and I kind of went on the same thing with this. Talking about all that alchemy, and I feel like it's telling you, even in there, it's showing you the ascension. And see, ascending, in my opinion, before, and I'm going to get into the tree, again, we have Netzach and Hod. I think when you go up, that is the spiritual ascension of both energies. Now, when you go down, you go into the moon and then project into Earth. Mm-hmm. I do think even when it was talking about children, that is still, unfortunately, it's going to sound crazy, that's kind of like alchemical magic, but in this realm.
Right.
So you're that kind of thing is even in myself, I think, showing descending instead of the mixture of the energies going up and coming together, but not producing a child, like, on the spirit sense. So I even do think it, children among men, I think it's still showing you kind of like a devil, going down instead of the mixing of the energies going up.
And that's what I was going to get into. A lot.
Not to sound crazy, but I do think that.
Yeah. But also, the passage I read before this, they talk about the halls of Amente being deep nestled inside the earth, close to the fallen city of Atlantis. And what do we know is deep nestled inside the center of the earth, but the black cube where the ancient archons are trapped.
Black cube.
Right. And there is, so there is also mention in this of this information being passed upwardly to humans. So
what was that movie, Teresa, you told me about, and I watched it, and all that shit was in it?
The Immortals.
Yeah.
And the Titans are locked in a black cube.
Oh man, that's
I've not seen that yet. Is it any good?
That's awesome.
That's
awesome.
Yeah, well, he was just saying the whole fucking thing right there. I was
The
like,
whole
wow.
thing, yeah. And then Zeus knocks the two pillars down, and they get released, and it's like a shit show.
Right. So now we have this within Greek mythology and within biblical mythology, they talk about Apollo sleeping in the bottomless pit. Within Greek mythology, they talk about basically the different archons that plundered humankind, being punished by Zeus and put into the center of the earth. Right. So with all that in mind, here's another passage. There in the circle from aeon to aeon sit great masters, living a life not known among men. There in the halls of life they lie sleeping. Free flows their soul through their bodies of men. Time after time while their bodies lie sleeping, incarnate they in the bodies of men, teaching and guiding upward and onward, out of the darkness into the light, where the hall of life filled with their wisdom, known not to the races of man, living forever, neath the cold fire of life sit the children of light. Times there are when they awaken, come from the depths to be among men, infinite they among finite men. So, again, this passage talks about them coming from below. So, and we know that all of these...
I even think the difference between man and men is used in occultism to specify a difference between the two.
Yeah.
That's in the tablets,
like Crowley even says, I'm a man among men. In the Gnostic
now,
Mass.
this is in the book or the translation by Durrell or Dorel, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean, right?
Okay, so in the Bible, in the book of Revelation, chapter 9, verse 11, 9/11, it says, they have as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek he is called Apollyon.
Right, and that's Apollo. He was a Hyperborean, right? That after the flood came into the Greek civilization, and when he came, he brought the medicinal gardens, which were essentially a pharmakia, right? Yep. And he also brought the apple tree, which
weren't they golden apples? There's another story.
That's a different story. Okay. But he brought essentially the apple or the Apollo tree, right? And that's where the Druids get the all heal, as far as growing. During the winter solstice, when the tree appears dead, which they represented as the mind of man or the mind of human, right? And then the all heal or the mistletoe would sprout, and it's a parasitic plant. They thought it was a plant from the heavenly realm that had been left behind when the gods fled to the moon, right? And it was left on earth. This is what the Druids thought. And essentially that was the all heal, or again, back to pharmakia, so all this stuff has to do with pharmacology.
And what colors is that? You mentioned what, you said mistletoe?
The all heal, as far as the Druids and the mistletoe, has white berries. So, kind of gets into the silver stone or the coin or the the white stone, as far as the healing property and the healing elements, simpatico,
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think it's interesting that through the course of, and I read this whole book last night, just to get it all in my head before we came on, and it's not a very long book. It's probably like 35 or 40 pages when you get down to the whole thing, let's see. So I got, okay. So here's another section. Before me arose a great throne of darkness, veiled on its seat a figure of night. Darker than darkness sat the great figure, dark with darkness not of the night. Before it then paused the master, speaking the word that bring about life, saying, O master of darkness, guide of the way of life into life. Before thee I bring a son of the morning. Touch him not ever with the power of night. Call not his flame to the darkness of night. Know him and see him, one of our brothers, lifted from darkness into the light. Release thou his flames from his bondage. Free let it flame through the darkness of night. So I just think these passages are fascinating, and when I first got this book, I must have been 16 or 17 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I just ate it up, and I was like, this is just, because it's all astral and talking about these great, very much like Star Wars,
I can see that
into Zoroastrianism and the Brotherhood of Light and the Brotherhood of Dark, and and even Dorel, right? It says that Dorel is associated with the Brotherhood of the White Temple, which we'll get into here in a little bit, right? But yeah, any thoughts while I look at this next little area?
Actually, real quick, I know Lee was just saying that he's got to leave. Lee, are you able to plug yourself real quick before you leave?
Oh, yes, of course, mate. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, I've got to go.
No, it's quite all right. It's quite all right.
I'm gutted as well, because, Robert, as always, mate, you're incredible, mate. You really are one of the most talented individuals I've ever known. Yeah, thanks again, everybody. Subconscious Realms available on Anchor, Spotify, and Apple. Instagram at subcon_realms33. Twitter is at subconrealms33, and email subconsciousrealms@gmail.com.
Very nice. Thank you, Lee. And when the show's over, I'll send you a copy for yourself too, my man.
Oh, nice one, mate. I love you all.
All right, yes, love you, Lee, and you be good, brother.
Cheers, mate.
Bye,
Thanks,
Lee.
mate. Bye.
Later.
Bye. Bye.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So just as far as the overall cosmology, I got a little part here. It says, forth then my soul sped throughout the cosmos, seeing ever new things and old, learning that man is truly spaceborn, a son of the sun, a child of the stars. So it's definitely some interesting perspective,
Do you think, I think that highly influenced the Kabbalion too?
Well, this came after the Kabbalion.
Oh, really?
Well, maybe not.
No, I'm not sure.
No,
I do think
Kabbalion.
I think both of them kind of have.
Definitely.
Yeah.
They have similar elements in regard to each other.
I remember
this came after the Kabbalion.
Oh,
so.
That's interesting, because I remember, looking into this book. I think I started reading it, and then I came across the Kabbalion and just went with that instead, and never really actually fully finished.
I think the Kabbalion is a much more lucrative text to manifestation and creation, as far as directing the mind in a positive aspect. This is more along the lines of a history and a prophecy, as far as the thought the Atlantean Emerald Tablets, right? Let's see. So it says, sought they to gain ever more knowledge, but seeking to bring it up from below. He who descends below must have balance, else he is bound by lack of our light. Open then they, by their knowledge, pathways forbidden to men. Yeah, and then I got a long. Now this is one of the stranger little parts out of it, because there's mention of a spaceship, which I thought was pretty interesting, right? And it's the only spaceship mentioned in the text, but it also mentions the pyramids themselves, right? They gathered I, the sons of Atlantis, into the spaceship. I brought all my records, brought all the records sunken Atlantis. Gathered I of my powers, instruments many of mighty magic. Up then we rose on wings of the morning. High we arose above the temple, leaving behind thee and dweller. Deep in the halls, neareth the temple down. Neath the waves sank the great temple, closing the pathway of the lords of the cycles. Yet ever with him who has knowing. Open shall be the path of Amente. But it goes on about this spaceship. Let's see. Deep neath the rocks, I buried my spaceship, waiting the time when man might be free. Over the spaceship, erected a marker in the form of a lion, yet like unto man. There neath the image rests yet my spaceship, forth to be brought when need shall arise. So, yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. So that's basically where all these people get this idea that there's a spaceship buried underneath the Sphinx. If you've heard people talking about that, right?
Well,
that comes from this.
I wonder if that's used. I mean, I've heard of spaceships buried in other places too before. I wonder if it's just playing off of that.
Well, and back to Prometheus, man. It's and that ship that rises out from, it's all encrusted. How many movies are out there where there's hidden spaceships, that they go and reactivate and use? It's but it also says, deep neareth the image lies my secret. Search and find in the pyramid I built. Each of the other is the keystone. Each the gateway that leads into life. Follow the key I leave behind me. Seek, and the doorway of life shall be thine. Seek thou in the pyramid, deep in the passage that ends in a wall. Use the key of the seven, and open thee, the pathway will fall.
What?
Apparently, yeah, he's saying that in the pyramid, I guess when you're going like towards the king's chamber where it dead ends, there's some sort of a key. And what was it? Zervan, who was a Zoroastrian kind of apostasy. He held the sevenfold key of eternity, was one of his mystical items that he had, right?
Yo, this is wild.
Yeah, but supposedly if you take this key of the seven and then, it opens some portal that will take you to this throne room in the halls of Amente, where these 32 thrones around the effulgent light are.
See, I mean, this even makes me think about this. When like Chess said, like I said before, it's like a magical image for it can be a king. And Chesed is also known as like a lower arc of Chokmah. And along in that area, I do think is where Janus stands, or him. And again, he's got the keys. Yeah. And, like that whole, like even in Pink Floyd, I can't remember that song Run. If you get caught trying to pick her box, again, another sexual connotation for something that probably isn't sexual. It's just Janus turning his key and fucking opening his jail cell.
Right. Well, and now you know that Janus, over time, was absorbed into the Catholic Church and basically became the cardinal or the holder of the keys, right?
I was going to say, isn't there something with Janus and keys in Rome?
Right. Well, the cardinals are the hinge, and they hold the keys.
You unlock that door, you get to go Rome.
Yeah, the seat of Peter. There you go.
Right? And which Peter?
Oh, it says, yeah, Janus is the god of doors.
Yes.
Apparently. Interesting.
Yes.
Well, and he's also related to the crossroads as well, being the beginning and the ending, and looking both ways.
Both ways.
You know,
Look both ways before you cross the street.
or into multiple dimensions.
Yes.
You
You know, that was a thing that I try to show a lot, and I wish I would have pushed it more with Halloween. I kind of pushed it more with Nightmare on Elm Street. But even especially in Nightmare on Elm Street, there was a lot of symbolism going back to Janus. And on line 17 in Crowley 777, it even states that, you know, Janus's thing is going in between both worlds as well.
Right.
So
Right.
what the fuck?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
now
and that's
here's
what
another
exactly,
passage.
and that's exactly what Freddy Krueger's doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Between realms, and eventually he's able to bring himself back into the physical world.
Doesn't he wear a red and green shirt?
Yes.
He wears a red and green shirt. Yep. So, okay, so here's another passage that says, man is in the process of changing to forms that are not of this world. Grow he's in time to the formless, a plane on the cycles above. Know ye must become formless before ye become one with the light. List ye, O man, to my voice, telling of pathways to light, showing the way of attainment. When ye shall be one with the light, search ye the mysteries of earth's heart. Learn the law that exists. Hold the stars in their balance. By the force of the primordial mist, seek ye the flame of earth's life. Bathe in the glare of its flame. Follow the three-cornered pathway until thou too are the flame. So, you know, it's interesting just to look at the symbology and kind of tie all these elements in and try to understand what this text is actually about. You know?
Even the ending of that sounds like the Supernal Triad.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting at the top of the tree.
Okay, so speak I of ancient Atlantis, speak of the days of the kingdom of shadows, speak of the coming of the children of shadows. Out of the great deep were they called by the wisdom of Earthman, called for the purpose of gaining great power. Far in the past, before Atlantis existed, men were there who delved into darkness, using dark magic, calling up beings from the great deep below us. Forth came they into this cycle. Formless were they of another vibration, existing unseen by the children of Earthmen. Only through blood could they have formed being. Only through man could they live in the world.
That's pretty fucking deep.
That's pretty,
Yeah, I mean, that even makes me, like, a lot of things made me think of, like, this earthly stuff that has us held here.
right.
In a way. Wow.
So here's a good one. Once in a time past, I approached the great barrier and saw on the shores where time exists not the formless forms of the hounds of the barrier. I, hiding in the mist, beyond time I found them, and they, scenting me far off, raised themselves and gave the great bell cry that can be heard from cycle to cycle and moving through space towards my soul. Fled I then fast before them, back from time's unthinkable end, but ever after me pursued they, moving in strange angles not known to man. I, on the gray shores of time-space end, I found the hounds of the barrier, raving for the soul who attempts the beyond. Fled I through cycles back to my body, fled, and faster after me they followed. I, after me, the devourers followed, seeking through angles to devour my soul. I, know ye men, that the soul who dares the barrier may be held in bondage by the hounds from beyond time until this cycle is all completed and left behind when the consciousness leaves. So it's just some interesting stuff, man.
To me, that whole thing was about, like, jumping crossing back and forth to the abyss.
The abyss, exactly.
You know, and you mentioned it, I think, twice, and I have mentioned this. I think in the Abramelin, it's mentioned, and again, this is with the H, hounds.
Yeah.
Again, something with an H associated with going back and forth.
Well, and they are the barrier where time ends. So, you know, it has to do with time again, interestingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is something I hadn't even thought of before, but it is definitely interesting, for sure. Let's see.
I mean, you said a whole lot in that, but I mean, sorry that was the one thing that stuck with me, but I mean, there was a lot in that.
Okay, so here, and I have like 3 more little sections, and then we're going to talk about the this book and how it came about and where it's from.
Okay.
Right? Once in a time long forgotten, I, Thoth, opened the doorway, penetrated into other spaces, and learned the secrets concealed. Deep in the essence of matter are the many mysteries concealed. 9 are the interlocking dimensions, and 9 are the cycles of space. 9 are the different consciousnesses, and 9 are the worlds within worlds. 9 are the lords of the cycle that come from above and below. Space is filled with concealed ones, for space is divided by time. Seek ye the key to space-time, and ye shall unlock the gate. Know ye that throughout the time-space, consciousness surely exists. From our knowledge it is hidden, yet still forever exists. The key to worlds within thee are found only within, for man is the greatest mystery, and the key that is one within one. So again, like alchemy, it's not necessarily talking about the outer worlds. This is talking about inner space. You know,
I mean, you mentioned 9. I mean, I don't know how many times. I mean, that all fits the moon with the Kabbalah too, or Yesod. I mean, that was fucking wild,
right?
And a lot of that shit, in my opinion, all fits. Like everything from the above on that tree is all consolidated into that number, that 9th sphere,
right?
And then projected
and
to here where Earth is.
3 9s, so it's 3 9s that make, or 3 3s that make the 9. So
93.
And it's very Pythagorean.
Yeah. And that I even think goes back to when David Icke goes on about his moon the moon and Saturn matrix. The 9th sphere and the 3rd sphere. That's what I think he's going
I've got a whole number thing that I went through between Saturn, the Earth, and the moon, and Venus, the Earth, and the moon, and showing the representative, like, you know, it's basically like almost an algorithm that exists within math naturally, that they've equated these bodies to, you got to wonder if they equated the bodies to them or the bodies just grew into become those things.
I know what you're saying exactly. Yeah, like how did that even work
which
out?
came
Like
first,
that?
the chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Okay, so I got this one. I got a medium one and a short one, and then we're done reading the passages. List ye, O man, while I give the secret, so that ye too shall taste not of change. 1 hour of each day thou shalt lie with thine head pointed to the place of the positive pole. 1 hour each day shall thy head be pointed to the place of the negative pole. While thou head is placed to the northward, hold thou thy consciousness from the chest to the head. And when thy head is placed southward, hold thou thy thought from the chest to the feet. Hold thou in balance once in each 7, and thy balance will retain the whole of its strength. If thou be old, thy body will be freshened, and thy strength will become as youth's. This is the secret known to the masters by which they hold off the fingers of death. Neglect not to follow the path I have shown, for when thou hast passed beyond years to 100, to neglect it, it will mean the coming of death. So again, we have this this technocratic promise of everlasting life on the earthly plane. You know,
You know what?
much like Zanoni and Edward Bull Lytton writing about the alchemist, you know, that showed up in all these different governments through time. And supposedly he was even at the signing of this mysterious figure at the signing of the Declaration of Independence in the United States. You know, it's, it's, you know, but essentially, you know, that's one of the keys of prolonging life, possibly.
Did you say stand to the right towards fire or something like that?
You lay with your head towards the North Pole for an hour, and then you lay with your head towards the South Pole for an hour. And somehow maybe that energy moving back and forth in you is supposed to renew and reinvigorate and bring, you know, longevity.
Yeah, no, I was wondering I was thinking about that because, it's not fire and water again to make steam, but that would be fire and earth, which would still create smoke.
Well,
and that would still be a rising thing again, too. Yeah,
right. Because the North Pole, so you have the above and below, you know, which is interesting because in Egypt, south is above, you know, which kind of is another way to occult all this stuff.
Yeah. Spirit,
and
fire is spirit. You know, they can use that as spirit that rises.
Right, and the Masons actually call the South the place of beauty. So it's but that's in relation to Egyptian, you know, so which it would be the North actually, or would be up. South would be up because of where Egypt's at and the way the Nile flows. South is actually up.
That's interesting.
So, yeah,
just reminded me of like Shavasana in yoga, like when you lie in corpse pose, and if you lie there for like 20 minutes, you feel like completely refreshed, like as if you slept like 8 hours, you know?
Well, maybe you got to do it an hour.
Maybe I have
it's even more refreshing.
Exactly. An hour north and an hour south.
Right. So I got one last little thing here, and this is short. Know ye, this earth is but a portal, guarded by the powers unknown to men. Yet the dark lords hide the entrance that leads to the heaven-born land. Know ye, the way to the sphere of Arula is guarded by barriers opened only by the light-born man.
Every man and woman is a star.
Every man and woman is a star, and that's, you know, straight up, you're a star-born being. You know, so
tells you,
yeah. So now, upon digging, right, I actually found that this is a modern book. This is not an ancient text.
Damn.
Right? This comes from a small cult in Colorado, and that this translation came out later to be this character of Durrell channeling these texts in his imaginal world from, as he called it, the Emerald Realm. And he received the instructions from the Ascended Masters before astrally plunging into the Great Pyramid itself to retrieve these emerald tablets of Thoth the Atlantean.
Very.
What?
Right?
Wild.
Yeah.
You know, all that channeling stuff, though, it makes me even still think about like what we were saying earlier before we recorded. I mean, we had Aleister Crowley. He channeled, you know, the Book of the Law.
Well, more than that, he channeled multiple books, man.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, yeah, I think, doesn't he have a book? I forgot what the name of it. It's pretty much of like all the things like he channeled. I mean, he had Lamb. There was other, Yep. And then you get that with the Mormons. They channeled some fucking God.
Yeah. So, but that's the whole thing, you know, when you start getting into channeled books, you know, it's, let's see. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, like I said, I still recommend that everybody go read this book, because it's not very big. You know, you honestly can, if you set your mind to it, you could read this in an afternoon.
Oh yeah, you know? I remember when I had it the first time. Like I said, I didn't get through it, but when I had it the first time, honestly, I found you can easily find a free PDF version online, and I downloaded it and had it on my phone with all my other books. And like I was like, oh wow, this actually isn't that big of a book.
No,
like it's
no,
not.
it's
So
not.
like you could
Yeah.
easily find it for free if you want to, and
yeah,
read it.
yeah.
So
I'm sure it's on archive.org.
there's fucking plenty of places.
Yeah. But and that's the thing when you start getting into these channeled books, as far as the Book of Lies. Have you heard of what's it called? The Urantia book?
No.
Yeah, we just brought it up. Well, I brought it up in a group chat recently. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Okay. Now that book, I read the Urantia book probably 15 or so years ago, but it's twice as thick as the New and the Old Testament put together. It's like a huge, thick, just brick. But the Urantia book is a channeled book as well. And it basically comes from these New Yorkers, somewhere around Albany, New York, right? And this is back in the Victorian era, when they were doing all the table rapping and the seances to summon the miscellany, and Houdini was going around proving all these frauds everywhere. But this group of New Yorkers, they basically channeled this Urantia book, and the first half of the book is about how creation manifests and like the 7 arms of the universe, and basically how in this newest arm of the universe where we are, basically the Luciferic rebellion happens, where the people on this planet specifically attain like free will and start to have thought of their own, and aren't just vibrating within the natural synchronicity of nature and instinct, right? So it kind of gets into the fall of man and the eating of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, but nonetheless, the second half of the book is it's the missing years of Jesus and all his travels through Asia and all the stuff that kind of is missing out of the Bible, So it's a channeled book,
Yeah.
When did that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Teresa.
No, I was just going to say quick, if anyone was interested in it, there is a YouTube channel called Urantia Papers that has the whole thing. You can just listen to it.
Nice.
Yeah. I've checked some of it out. Not all of it, but yes.
Yeah, that's a great read as well. I mean, Book of Lies is a great read.
Mm-hmm.
All this stuff, and that's the whole thing. When you get into the idea of channeling, is it that they're tapping into some sort of cosmic ether, and bringing these things in from, or is it the subconscious mind with genetic memory of all the cosmos that somehow we're able to open some portal in the mind that facilitates bringing forth these, because it's interesting, generally when people are channeling this stuff, it always has a tendency to be some sort of a sacred phenomenon that is manifesting itself out of itself, so
maybe there's like a ley line around there or something, some weird shit like that. Well, no, when I wanted to ask, when did that book come out? Because like there was a lot of shit with, there was a lot of stuff.
No, I got it here.
I find a lot of stuff with like New York, and once you start going or heading upstate, at least, I mean, you even had in Palmyra, that's where Angel Moroni buried his shit, and the Mormons found it. You know what I'm saying? Again with upstate New York.
Totally.
And even Albany is where like a lot of the Nexium cult was going on.
Yep.
Something.
There
like
was
that
one cult in Albany, I remember, and it may have been the Mormons, where they sold everything they owned, and they had written down the prophecy of the end date that some scholar had figured out, and they went up on this bluff overlooking like the river there, and they just kind of all just waited for God, and he never came.
I think that might have been them.
Well, another thing with channeled material too is like it could just be straight up lies, like.
Well, but that's why I get into the fact that a lot of this talks about this material coming from the underworld or from the depths or being handed upward, or talking about these dark masters that are and it's like that, the idea within mystic history and philosophy, it's like the omega point, or the idea of liberty, where essentially these entities that have been trapped inside the earth, they're waiting for that liberty, or that omega point where the cycle ends, so that they can basically escape or rise again. Right. So there's this, I think it directly speaks to these entities that are trapped inside the earth, that are talking about higher realms and how to ascend, but at the same time they're trapped.
Well, how do you know that they're trustworthy also?
Again, yeah.
Yeah.
So the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean was actually first published in 1925, right? And the guy that published it, he is not a doctor. He was a drugstore clerk, and this was just something that he, through his magical workings and his association with Thoth, went in and astrally traveled into the center of the pyramid and channeled these books, or this text into its current form, and based around that, there is I think that this cult in Colorado is still actually active. So,
well, that's interesting. I mean, that's very much like Book of the Law type too, where use pyramids.
Yeah. So that went 45 minutes. See, it's probably good we just covered it.
Yeah, no, that worked out
We
fine.
wrapped it all up into a neat little bow.
No, you're right. It would have been like it would have been like 45 or an hour episode. You might as well just finish.
It would have been a hanging Chad.
Yeah, exactly. Yo, that was again like usual, and that's why I always have you on, Robbie. You always fucking bring amazing stuff. Thank you so much.
It's fun stuff, though, huh?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, look at all the just random things we, all the talks and the chats about each other's point of view on the situation. I love it.
Yeah.
Because
it also acts to accentuate and heighten our understanding of the subject by conversing.
Yes. Yeah, like I always say, I think we all, put it this way. I think this is a good example of saying it. We could have a rose in the middle of the floor, and there could be 8 of us standing around, and we're all looking at the same fucking thing, but from a different angle.
Right.
So it's not the same, actually.
Right.
In our vision.
Well, it's like the old mythos of the blind men, and they're all feeling different parts of the elephant. And they're like, what are you talking about? This part's hard and lumpy, and no, this part's like hairy, and it's like, but it's still the same elephant.
Yes. Yes.
So that's why I love this. The subject is really so vast. It's like, you saw all the different areas that this kind of goes into, it's, but that original Emerald Tablet is probably the most anciently referenced, like alchemical hermetic, writing, and the Duriel, Thoth the Atlantean book, I think it plays to a great extent on alchemical ideas, but it's something completely different, historically and metaphysically,
Yeah. Thank you very much, man, for everything that you just brought to this. I mean, that was an amazing episode. Yeah. I love this stuff.
And I think this is something that I think is relevant, especially, when you have all these, you see memes constantly made with Thoth the Atlantean Emerald Tablets stuff, So
even a lot of stuff that we were just talking about before. I mean, every time we talk about Thoth, we could be actually talking about the color orange. And then we're talking about Emerald Tablets, that's green. That's even just symbolized in things we're seeing going on in the world today. We're seeing that shit going on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's funny how
it's like
all these royal lines, claim these colors and, precipitate these symbolic mythical animals. And, this stuff goes back into the roots of civilization,
I believe it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you again. Robbie, is there anything you want to plug?
Yeah, if you I mean, I'm on Google. If you just Google R Marx, MARX artist. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I have a Etsy page with some of my art. I'm on Twitter. But then also I just started releasing some of my miscellaneous interviews with different people on my own podcast RSS feed, which is Meta Mindcast,
Yes.
METTA. Mind, MIND, cast, CAST.
Yeah.
And the meta, as far as METTA, my wife right away, she was like, that's not how you spell meta. Like like Facebook meta, META, right? Meta, as far as METTA, actually goes back into ancient Eastern philosophy and constitutes the idea of all-encompassing love for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So
shit. Okay.
it's yeah. So basically, what I try to do when I'm out here doing this stuff is give people a footing so that they can understand what this information is, so that as they go through and try to make decisions, that they're not led astray. And I do this all out of love, man.
Oh, I
Love
know
for
it. I know
creation,
it.
love
Yeah.
for reality, love for the extensive, like, just wealth of information that's available. It's just all love all the way around, man. So yeah.
That's why I fuck with you, brother. Because I know it,
Yeah. But that's the Meta Mindcast, man. So
Awesome.
And then also in mixed in with those miscellaneous interviews that I'm doing on other shows, I'm also going to start releasing the hours I have recorded of the information of my research that I've got with music. It's like mastered, by my friend Christian Essex over here. That lives down the road. He's got a studio in his barn, and he's been helping me out doing a lot of that stuff.
Oh, that's gangster, bro. Good for you.
Yeah,
Good for
so
you.
and dude, we even went in, and for the music of it, this is when remember how I talked about I was researching the planetary numbers and the tessellations coming out of them.
Uh-huh.
I actually took and sat down based on prime. I use all prime numbers, and I built this grid of prime numbers in accordance with the color spectrum and musical notes. And I went over there, and we just basically plugged all that into the computer as far as, and we set bells on every prime note. And then we basically turned and looped it on itself and created the background music for the show based on this little algorithm I made based off prime numbers. So the music is its own manifestation within itself as well.
That is gangster, bro.
Yeah, dude.
You know, it's wild. You mentioning that even reminds me. I just want to add this because of what you're saying. I had someone that I was close to or friends with. We both left the OTO around the same time. Mm-hmm. He was very big into making beats and sound. He made his own digital music. And he had a program that he told me you could literally draw sigils or copy them and put them in there, and will create sound off of the way that the sigil is drawn. And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, there's what was it, the guy that just ended, the drummer that ended up dead, that they released the Netflix special.
Oh, Foo Fighters? Oh, was it him?
The Foo Fighters, yeah. On some of their songs, I've actually seen people bring it into programs where you can analyze the waveforms, and a lot of those songs you can see the sigils in the actual waveform of the music.
Holy
So just a thought.
Nice.
Yeah,
Really
man.
Nice.
Yeah, man.
I'll make sure I don't have the link now. I totally forgot. If you can, after the show, just send it to me through Instagram. I will add your podcast link in there in the bottom. Like I said, I forgot that, but I think there already is, as of right now on the live, I already think I included all your links except for that.
Yeah.
So I'll add that for the show when it drops. Thank you again, Robby. Teresa, would you like to plug your show?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. And that was amazing, obviously. So you can check me out on the Spiritual Gangsters with you. So that's on YouTube and like all the major podcast platforms. And I'm most active over on Instagram. If anyone wants to check it out, just my name at Teresa.Kassar.
Very nice. And I got the link tree for that as well. That's in there. Robbie, thanks again for another amazing episode as usual.
For sure, man.
I thoroughly enjoyed that. It was a great discussion and a talk. And thank you all for who jumped in on the live for this. That's probably the most people I've had in a chat since I've gotten this new account. So that might say something, Robbie. Thank you again. And thank you for everybody chiming in. All of yous, Arnold, Eric, Helen was here, my boy Mark, Tree Marie.
Hey,
Lisa, thank you all for jumping in and saying what's up. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.